Hey everyone, I'm Jay Smith, and this is Bradley Kendall, and this is After Further Review, where we're going to do our best to cover the entire college football landscape in 60 minutes or less. So Bradley, after further review?
Wide right.
Thank God.
Thank the Lord. It started in the Clemson game. Coming in this, we were favored by 18 coming in, and I really didn't think State really had it in them. They hadn't really played anybody yet.
Yeah, we definitely did not show up to play for this game. Nope. Slept on it at home. The crowd, we were both there, and the crowd felt like they really weren't into the game for most of it.
We were nervous.
Well, no real big plays for Clemson the entire game. There was nothing going offensively for the first couple of quarters.
And you really been able to tell that by the numbers. I mean, Deshaun had 378 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had a pretty good game all around, but just,
it was turnovers.
Yeah.
It came down, with Deshaun's pick 6 to start the second half, that was obviously not the momentum swing that you were looking for, especially with how close the score was. But just the 2 fumbles, I know one by Gallman was kind of expected.
Nothing you can really do
about that. He took a huge hit, so there wasn't much you could do there. But just mental mistakes really kept State in this game for way too long.
It's kind of been our Achilles heel the entire year. I mean, we've played pretty good offense, but the Troy game, the Auburn game, all that, we just turned the ball over, and we can't do that.
Yeah. And State, credit to NC State, because they came in, to a usually very hostile environment and played very well. So there's, you can't discount anything that State's, was able to do on Saturday, in the entire season. Mm-hmm. If they had been able to knock off Louisville.
Oh my gosh, you could be looking at a potential ACC champion.
Yeah,
out of Raleigh.
So
they moved the ball well. They had a good game plan coming in. They exploited our struggles of the run defense. Matthew Days, what a day! 22 carries, 106 yards.
Well, a lot of screenplays on their offense. They did a great job getting the ball to the perimeter, and they never really had to worry about the center. I didn't really see them throw to the center of the field very much.
Very rare. I mean, it looked like last year's Clemson team.
Yeah, it was just quick out to the sideline, 5-6 chunky yards. And they were able to move the ball pretty much at will. But the defense stepped up, and holding them only to 17 points, it was an impressive performance defensively. Again, when you put your defense in holes like that with turnovers so often, they have no chance to recover, with fatigue. And I think if you clean up the offensive turnovers, the game would not have been as close as it was.
Not at all, because State got in the red zone, I think it was 9 times. They only scored 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So credit to Venables in the defense, having to come back on the field frequently, probably sitting on their heels. They had a really good game.
But make no mistake, a 33-yard field goal from straight down that should have been made. State should have
that 19 out of 20 times.
State should have won that game. There's really no excuse for the way that Clemson played. Obviously, with the bye week, they're going to have a chance to look at film and look at different things. As far as cleaning that sort of stuff up, but
that's not something you can be doing. You can't play like this against Florida State.
No,
Florida State's definitely a better team.
Lucky to get away with a win.
Oh my gosh, we really are. I mean, you saw Dabo at the end of the game just patting the ground. He was just thanking the Lord for, keeping us in it. That was our playoff hopes, just hanging there.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk about where Clemson would fall. Obviously, the rankings are already out, but where Clemson would be in relation. We'll get to that later in the show, where they would be in relation to the teams that had bye weeks. But just based off of that performance, I know we've talked about Troy extensively on how our performances this season, barring, let's say, Louisville, compared to the other undefeated teams. And this did not make us look good at all. Barely scrape by at home.
It added to the hate we were getting from all the haters out there that we were barely squeaking by. We weren't really dominating like we should be, and this is just another field.
Well, it doesn't help our cause. It doesn't help justify that we should be in the top 3, 4, 1 or 2 wherever in the country.
But thankfully for the playoff, if you win the ACC and you're undefeated, you're going to automatically get in. So we're still on track. It makes us 7-0.
Scrape by.
Yep.
Next game we're going to look at was from the SEC. Arkansas playing Ole Miss. Razorbacks come out on top, 34-30. Didn't really have a chance to sit down and watch this game.
I didn't really get to either, but it really impressive for Arkansas. Ole Miss was, a good first half team. They were really a solid team all around for being 3-2, and they were able to shut Chad Kelly down. He was held to 18 for 39 for 253 yards.
Wow.
So credit to Arkansas, they had a really good game plan.
Any interceptions? Did he throw any picks in that game?
He probably did. Let me look. He threw 1 pick.
Okay.
But just wasn't able to get anything going. Austin Allen, great performance for him once again.
Both of these teams really are not competing for an SEC championship.
Not really.
They're out, but at the same time, they're trying to get into a good bowl at this point.
Yeah.
So it was a good win for Arkansas, and if you're Ole Miss, it's not that their major goal is already unattainable.
Yeah.
So they're just going for a good bowl game at this point. So a setback, to say the least, but
Doesn't matter if you'll miss. They're 3-3, and you can still be ranked.
Yeah, they're still in the top 25. But this doesn't kill Miss's season, and it helps the Razorbacks.
It does. It makes them 5-2, which is a good year. Not compared to what they had last year. This is good for.
Beamla has been there for 3 or 4 years since he came from Wisconsin, and he's turned around fairly well.
Good quarterback.
So impressed so far with Arkansas.
Yeah, he's hoping the Allen family has one more brother they can bring in to play quarterback once Austin leaves.
Yep, there you go. Next game again, SEC, was Alabama-Tennessee. I can't really say I expected this game to be close.
I think we both said it was going to be a blowout, but not.
But I didn't expect 49-10.
Yeah, this if you look at the final score, you would never have thought this was the number 9 team in the country that Alabama played. I mean,
what? They were the 8 or they were 9?
Tennessee was either 9 or 8.
8 somewhere in there, right?
They were a top 10 team, and they've really been. They've been playing pretty well. I mean, Tennessee had some success. You thought maybe they're at home, they're motivated.
Well, we talked about how Tennessee's had 3 21-point. They've been able to erase 3 21-point deficits this season.
Yeah.
They found ways to win, but we all know that you can't do that against Alabama, even if you're at Old Rocky Top.
Yeah.
Once they were down 14, it was.
You started the year just got let out.
Their offense was nothing. They were just They
were nothing special. Dobbs had
running in
92 yards.
Yeah.
His QBR was 3.7.
Yeah, there was nothing going on offensively or even defensively for Tennessee in this game.
I think his GPA is probably higher than his QBR. It's that game.
I just if you're Butch Jones, because that's a terrible loss.
That's right.
I think that, and I'm not exactly sure, but I think that is one of the worst losses at home for an AP top 10 team ever.
Gotta be.
I mean, 39 points at home and you're in the top. I'm not sure, but I think that's one of the worst losses ever.
And they gave a Florida State performance against Louisville.
But the thing is were they even expecting to compete?
You got to think they'd be motivated to, because this was their one final chance.
Then how do you only put up 10 at home? Is Alabama just that good?
It goes to see how good Bama is. I think it really does.
Yeah, because it was never close. Never felt like a game.
To me, it's kind of like the Louisville game where Florida State got out early and they just they were just completely unmotivated to finish the rest of the game. This is kind of the same way. I mean, once you get the crowd out of the game, Alabama's on cruise control.
Yeah, I mean that 100,000 fans doesn't do you anything when you're down, 35-7 or whatever the score was. Next game we're looking at is from the ACC. UNC playing Miami. Canes now on a 2-game skid after they drop 20-13.
I told you, man. Miami, they were. This was not their year.
I must say I'm surprised, but also you got to give credit to UNC for winning. They've beaten Virginia Tech and now Miami
and Florida State.
And
they lost to Virginia Tech.
They did.
34-3.
That's right. You're right. They got blown out by Virginia Tech.
But this was a good turnaround.
Yes. No, good performance for sure to be able to come out on top of the Canes. And now Miami sitting at 2 losses.
You're 1-2 in the conference, already with a loss to UNC. I think the ACC Coastal's out of the picture now. You would think.
More than likely, the Coastal is still murky. Well, the Coastal's still murky, so anything can really happen over there. But I agree with you. I don't see the Canes.
They've still got a game against Virginia Tech coming up. We got the game right here.
So
they've got opportunities, but
now where do you put them if they beat Virginia Tech? Do you give them a shot at the Coastal? Or do you just say that there's too much inconsistency going on right now?
Yeah, I'm not confident in them because week in and week out, I don't think they can keep up a consistent good performance.
And their offense.
13 points. I mean,
hasn't been able to put up more than 20 the last 2 weeks.
You can have Brad Kaya, but you need supporting cast.
Yeah, I will agree with you there. I was kind of high on Brad Kaya, but, he can't do everything. He can't throw and catch the ball. And if you're only able to put up 13 against UNC and 19 against Florida State, not looking good offensively.
And the thing is, if you're Miami and you do end up beating Virginia Tech, you still have Carolina you're looking up to. And looking at UNC's schedule coming up, they're already, 2 games ahead of Miami in the division?
Yeah.
They've got Virginia, Georgia Tech, Duke, the Citadel, and NC State.
Lots going to have to happen for Miami to even have a remote chance of winning the Coastal. The last game that we're going to look at was from the Big Ten. In my opinion, one of the top 3, if not one of the best games of this season with Ohio State and Wisconsin. And I'll admit I was not high on Ohio State going into Camp Randall and winning.
Especially not after the first half.
I thought that with such a young team, and they did show a little bit of they showed how young they were in the first half, but they came out. I think Urban Meyer did a good job at halftime, with whatever pep talk he was able to give them, and they played extremely well. Ended up winning in overtime. Really very impressed.
Very good performance for both teams, really. I mean, Wisconsin, they only fell to number 10. This proved that they were really able to play up to the level of Ohio State and Michigan.
Yes.
But Ohio State, way to handle Camp Randall Stadium. I mean, that was really impressive to see JT Barrett lead his team.
No,
Kind of reminded me of the Florida State-Miami game where Florida State was kind of out of it early, and then they just crept their way and they dominated the second half.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I think that more than anything this season kind of helps justify Ohio State getting as much hype as they have. Because, again, I haven't really been sold on the Buckeyes, but after that performance against Wisconsin, at night in Camp Randall with game day and all that hype, I'm impressed, that Ohio State was able to pull that one out.
Of course, you still got Michigan. So all this could change.
Yep.
But this is definitely a big confidence booster. You can handle this for sure for Urban Meyer and his team.
Well, I mean, Ohio State and Michigan at the end of the year figures to be
starting to shape up to be a doozy.
One of the biggest games of the year,
Absolutely.
if not the biggest. So, yeah, those are our 5 big games from this past weekend. And so now we're going to do what we've done for the last few weeks, the ref segment. I have a few more questions for you this week.
Hit me.
So we'll go ahead and get that started. So first question, do teams on bye weeks deserve to move up or down in the rankings?
I've never been a fan of it, especially in this instance with Clemson. I don't think it should have happened. They didn't prove anything. Kind of goes back. I was looking into some videos the other day. I was looking at when TCU, when they were fighting for that playoff spot. Remember they were third that one year?
Yes.
And they didn't do anything to hurt themselves, and they still fell back.
6th, right?
They went to 6th.
They went to 6th.
Michigan and all them, they didn't prove anything with this. Nothing. Clemson, I know they faltered a little bit, but they still won the game. And they were still able to beat NC State. I know they should have probably ended up losing. But I don't think you can move a team below someone that didn't prove anything.
I'm not going to flag you, but the way I look at it is this. You have to look at their most recent performance. Whether or not they had a bye, really for me doesn't matter. You just have to look at their most recent game. And then, obviously their season as a whole. But when I look at Clemson's most recent performance, it doesn't match up to A&M's or Michigan's or Washington's. It just doesn't. There's no way you can tell me that a Clemson playing that type of game against NC State is going to be able to compete.
So you're saying that Clemson hurt themselves enough to move themselves down?
In that particular instance, yes, just because I think that it should not matter. Like, teams that are on bye weeks should not all of a sudden be cemented where they are and they can't move.
Well, if they don't do anything to prove themselves, then they should automatically slop up, especially when a team wins a game.
But I don't. Even
lose.
If they slip down a few, I just don't see. Now, TCU's was a more extreme case because
that was on a bigger level.
They almost got. I mean, they basically got screwed by the entire system. But again, I think that you have to look at their most recent performance, whether it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago or yesterday. And rank your teams. That start over with a clean slate every week. Stop, because the thing with the polls that I just don't like is they have this structure, I guess if you will, of teams, and the teams can only move so much because they're already in this structure. You don't wipe it out every week and start over. That's what they should do.
Now the only thing I would say about that is if you have an upset, you can't. If you look at their recent performance, you slide out everything. Remember, you have to include everything. It's a whole body of work.
Yes.
If Clemson were to lose this game to NC State, would you consider State the better team all around? Would you put State at number 3 in the country?
I mean, I can see where you're coming from there.
Because I think you have to look at the whole body of work. Like Washington almost lost to Arizona, who's 2-5.
Yeah, so, Arizona's one of the worst teams in the Pac-12.
Everyone's going to trip up. Louisville almost lost to Duke. So you got to look.
Should have lost to Duke with the running into the kicker penalty. But again, NC State with a 33-yard field goal.
I think especially if you don't lose, I don't think you can move, especially 3 spots. I would not justify moving them that far.
My issue is splitting it. Like with Clemson, how Michigan jumped and Washington and A&M did not. That to me feels kind of cheap. It just feels shallow. It's like, Michigan, because they got a first. It's probably because they got that first place vote.
Let's
be honest.
Michigan is voting for
whoever's giving them the first place vote is the reason that they're in third right now.
All the reason they're up.
I'm just not a fan of, this structure that we have where we can only move teams so much, and teams on bye weeks are like, oh, they don't exist.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't like the poll system.
I don't like
either.
that.
That's why we have the playoff. That's exactly why we have it.
That's fair.
Also looking at this, I mean, it's not going to matter. A&M plays Alabama.
Oh, it's all about the mix up.
So it's just all for our.
It's all going to mix up. Next question: does Urban Meyer complain? I don't know if you saw this. Does Urban Meyer complaining about the sideline interference penalty that he received during the Wisconsin game? Does that bother you? I don't know if you had a chance to. Yeah, there was a little bit on ESPN, and he was basically going off on what a stupid rule it was, and how that him barely being grazed. He tried to say that he didn't even know he'd been hit by the ref, and how should that cost his team 15 yards in a big game like
Was
that?
this when he got slapped in the face? Is that what you're talking
By
about?
the ref who was doing like the windmill, like staying in bounds motion? Does that bother you, him complaining?
The whole sideline interference thing, I've never really understood. I mean, I guess if you really come that far,
Well, it's a safety issue.
It is
Because
true.
if you're a back judge and you're running down the field to watch a receiver on the field, and all of a sudden you've got, let's say, Venables out on the field. I don't know if there was a picture that I saw from this past game against NC State, and I think it was when one of the state players was making an interception.
Yeah.
And Venables was as high in the air as that player was.
Yeah.
And like when you're a ref, obviously your main focus is the game. You can't pay attention to what's going on behind you. So if there's a safety issue, because that white line, the white zone between the field and the sideline is supposed to be just for the refs.
Did they get a warning, Ohio State, or was it penalized?
Oh, it was a penalty because the ref made contact with Urban Meyer.
I think you should warn him, especially because it wasn't that, he did hit him because it was kind of he didn't know he was going to be hit by the referee. It was him doing the motion. I think he first started with a warning, unless they're like.
So it doesn't bother you?
Not really. I think he's got a reason to be upset.
I gotta
especially because it was right there in an important situation.
I got to throw the flag on that one because, see, this just to me is whining about. It's just whining. I mean, that's the rule. Like you're not supposed to be in that zone. Now, if it's a timeout or if there's the play clock and you're calling a play, it's excusable. But he doesn't need to be in that area during a play.
Like I said with the warning, the Miami-Duke game last year, when the players were all running on the field during the play, that's when you penalize. When you're a few feet out, I don't think it's a huge deal. I think you pull them aside and say, hey, listen, you can't be that far out.
I can see what you're saying. I just think that in this particular instance, it's the principle of making a contact with an official.
He made the call because it was the rule.
Incidental or non-incidental, he made contact with an official. So you really have, in that instance, you have to throw the flag.
It's arguing against the rule book. It's unfortunate, but it is the rule. Yep.
Next question, Boise State and Western Michigan, still undefeated. Are they Cinderella teams with a legitimate chance to spoil the college football playoff party?
Absolutely not. Boise State does not have the schedule. Western Michigan doesn't have the schedule.
I'm going to agree with you here.
With all the teams that we have this year, we have all the chances. Even like a 2-loss team might get in, 1-loss team might get in.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's the year.
They need multiple years of sustained excellence, especially Western Michigan.
Exactly,
I mean, we know Boise State. They've been there, done that. It's been a while. It's been a while. But there's credibility to their name. Nobody knows a thing about Western Michigan except the people in Western Michigan.
Exactly.
So 2 or 3 years of undefeated seasons, then you come talk to me. But for right now, I agree with you there. There is no chance.
It's just not the year.
No chance. Next question, Jake Browning, Washington quarterback. Should he be a legitimate Heisman candidate?
I think at this point, I looked at his stats. He's got 23 touchdowns. Lamar's got 30.
Only 2 interceptions.
Only 2. Yeah, I think you have to. And this kind of goes back to last year. I know we don't like Baker Mayfield. We've never really been a big fan.
Yeah.
He had like 36 touchdowns on like 5 picks last year, like 35 and 5. So he had an incredible year. I think he'd at least, if he keeps this up and sustains it.
His pace. He's got to keep that pace.
I would at least move him, put him in New York.
Well, just to give you some stats, when we talked about the touch, he has 1,418 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He has a 72.2 completion percentage, and he's averaging almost 10 yards a completion.
I don't see how you can keep him out now.
He hasn't thrown an interception in October.
He's done better than Sean has.
So, based off of his performance, if he continues, what I'm saying is if he continues his pace, is he up there with Lamar?
I think you also have to look at how Washington does. If they were to fall off, they like to see teams that do really well, that especially in the quarterback.
Let's say Washington goes undefeated and Louisville ends 11-1, and Lamar and Browning are about the same. Who do you give the nod to?
Ooh, if they're really close, like
you have to look at big game performance.
That's true.
Honestly.
At this point, Lamar, he proved himself in that big game. Washington.
That's fair. That's fair.
I said, Washington doesn't have that huge game yet.
That's fair.
And when it's the Heisman voting, did they do that before the playoff, or I think it's
I want to
before.
say it's before.
Yeah, because they did Jameis versus Mariota. They was the.
It's
Heisman
after
the
conference championship games,
after
isn't it?
that one.
Yes,
So,
but before bowl games.
But
I
that
think,
might be a last resort thing.
I think he's easily. I mean, if he continues the pace, easily a
he's in
finalist.
contention. Absolutely.
Easily a finalist for New York, even over Deshaun right now.
And it's like we said last year
opinion.
with McCaffrey. He's on the West Coast, so not a lot of people get to see him that often.
Yeah.
So you really, you got to start paying attention to him.
Yeah. And Pac-12 is, they have decent defenses. They're not great, but they're
not a pushover.
Yeah, by any means. Then this is kind of a bit of subjective question here. Best game of the year so far, now that we're halfway through the season. Is it Georgia, Tennessee, Clemson, Louisville, or Ohio State, Wisconsin?
I would go Clemson, Louisville, No bias at all. I know we were at the game. The Georgia-Tennessee one, when you look at the teams who they are now, Tennessee fell off the cliff, so did Georgia. The Ohio State-Wisconsin game, both are still in contention in their own divisions. I just think with the amount that was on the line for the Clemson-Louisville game, the winner of that game pretty much decides the ACC Atlantic. And that was such a great game. It such great quarterbacks.
It was. Obviously, there is a little bit of bias since we were at the game. I hate to throw the flag here, so I'm gonna resist that urge. It was probably. I mean, yeah, I can see your argument. I see the argument.
Just the amount that was on the line.
Ohio State, though, with the performance, I mean, Georgia-Tennessee was remarkable, but it's one of those things that like. There's always one of those games every year.
It's like the Georgia game.
It just ends in an improbable manner, and you're just like, wow, that was really cool. But besides that, I wouldn't necessarily say that up until the last play, was it the best game of the year?
Absolutely not.
No. With Ohio State, Wisconsin, with Ohio State being such a young team, being able to handle that environment, I know Louisville came in and handled Clemson for most of that game. Except for the second quarter where we put up 28 on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Ohio State, Wisconsin can argue that they're one of the best game of the season.
It's definitely in the top three, I would say. Just I think the amount of scoring that went on with the Clemson-Louisville game was just so back and forth at the end.
It was.
The end of the game, the stop.
It had everything.
It was suspenseful.
It had everything because, like I said, even when Clemson went up in the half, you knew he was coming. You knew Lamar was going to come out that second half and just light him up. And it was only a matter of time, and everybody in the stadium knew what Lamar was going to, but nobody could stop him.
Couldn't do it.
So I can agree with it. I hadn't thrown my flag very much. It's been only one time. One time.
Good thing you got 7 questions.
Yeah. Next question. Biggest letdown team of the year so far. And I'm going to list 6 for you. Oklahoma, Michigan State, UCLA, USC, Notre Dame, or Stanford. A lot of teams there.
I'm torn between Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Stanford. What were the other ones again?
UCLA. Oklahoma, UCLA, USC.
See, I think Oklahoma's not even having that bad a year. I wouldn't put them that far.
I can agree with you there.
They haven't fallen off yet.
Yeah. Well, USC hasn't fallen off. They've done about as good as everybody expected them to do.
I just think the only reason they were in the top 25 was because they were USC.
Absolutely.
And UCLA's always ranked high. And
Absolutely.
Always
Absolutely.
Didn't even surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to go Notre Dame. I really would. Just they're 2-5 now. Preseason top 10. You got Kaiser back after a year under his belt.
Senior.
He's a senior.
Draft prospect.
You had so many big games they could have used, and this would have been their year to climb up.
Well, to be honest, the Stanford, I know they lost, but that would have been a big game if Stanford hadn't. And Stanford's they're not sub 500 by any stretch of the imagination.
I never thought Stanford was top 10 to begin with. I thought Notre Dame was definitely
Stanford was riding the Christian McCaffrey hype train.
I mean, we didn't even know who their quarterback was.
And once, I'll be honest though, UCLA, they get hyped up every year. And Jim Mora.
Josh Rosen, one of the most disappointing players of the year.
That's my number one disappointment. Like, I know Notre Dame has been terrible. But UCLA?
Yeah, the only reason I wouldn't say that is because they've done it in years past.
I mean, Rosen was coming into the season, he was a Heisman finalist.
They were up
He was on the Heisman radar, and he has done nothing.
But Notre Dame's 2-5. They're 2-5. The amount of pressure that comes for Notre Dame, I mean, just all that was on the line.
They're not going to get rid of Kelly.
Sorry to Jack that's in the audience.
We got one fella in here, live studio audience, but I don't see him getting rid of Kelly. So I think that
he's got a 6-year deal. They're not going to pay him out to get his contract out. Yeah.
Now we're going to go for a bonus round here. All right.
Ooh, okay.
So this is going to be a little bit different, and I think. If I can grab. All right, so we're going to do, you know how Fowler used to do game day questions?
Okay.
And he would lay the 100 out on the table if you got the question right?
This is like a putting thing.
I got a $10 bill here, and if you can answer this question correctly, I will give you the $10 bill.
For real, you actually will?
I will give you the $10 bill.
Okay.
If you can answer this question. Just so everybody can see, that is a $10 bill. All right, so here you go. Who won the South Dakota State, North Dakota State game this weekend, and what was the score?
God. Well, this is going to be a total guess. I'm trying to think. You wouldn't put this on here unless it was super surprising, or maybe this is just so obscure.
I don't know, but there's
I'm going to go
$10 on the line.
North Dakota State 38-35.
You are wrong. South Dakota State won.
Did they really?
They did. 19-17 over the Bison at North Dakota State.
For the Jackrabbits.
First regular season loss for North Dakota State in 15 games.
Wow, that might be one of the biggest upsets of the year.
Honestly, and did you even know they lost?
I had no idea. No. I mean, no one talked about it.
Missed out on the $10. Maybe you'll get it again next week. We'll try. We'll try to incorporate that to the show at least one time at the end of the ref segment.
I like that. That's good.
Ask you a question, put some money on the line, make you sweat a little bit. So that was the ref segment. We're going to move on now. Look at the Power Five. Again, one big thing from each conference. Starting with the ACC, in my opinion, one of the biggest things was Clemson almost choking away almost a lock of the college football playoff berth. And again, the Coastal's pretty much anyone's game.
At this point, it's a toss-up. Yeah, I mean, it could be anybody. We got a lot of football left to play.
For sure.
Question for you real quick before we move on. Which do you think was more surprising near upset-wise? Clemson, NC State, or Louisville, Duke? Which do you think was more of a surprise? I would argue Louisville, Duke.
I think Louisville. Because
I mean, Clemson's been struggling.
I expected NC State to contend with Clemson. I thought that it was going to be
and I know I said 42-24, but
I thought it was going to be a game that was going to be decided in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But Louisville has they look flat. Now we did too. We look very flat. But
and every team has an off day.
But Duke, I didn't give them any chance really to beat Louisville.
Oh, I thought they'd be over the first quarter.
And they really should have won.
That flag, I mean,
really should have won.
When you have a roughing the kicker versus running into the kicker.
Well, it was a personal foul because of that, wasn't it?
It
gave them
15
yards.
Of a 5-yard penalty.
I mean, that would have screwed up Louisville's season beyond repair, though.
I always hated how. I mean, I know that's their job. They're supposed to look like it's draw contact, but it reminds me of soccer players. They just fall over after barely getting hit. So.
It's like flopping in basketball. It's in every sport.
Duke got robbed. Duke did get robbed.
Not as bad as they did against Miami.
Oh, let's not even talk about that.
Was that last year and the 8 laterals or whatever it was? That
the ACC refs are not looking good.
No.
Nope.
Big 12, Nebraska survives a scare against Indiana, a scare. And we've already talked about it a little bit. The Michigan-Ohio State game is shaping up to be one of the biggest games this season.
It's going to be a throwdown. It's good because we haven't had this since like 2006 when they were 1-2.
Yeah, where we had it. Now that game is at.
That's good. Let me look this up because we've been bringing it up so many times.
I know we talk about it, but I forget where it is.
At Ohio State.
Really?
So, I mean, when you have two teams that are super close like this, home field almost comes into play.
Yeah, that's
huge.
That is huge, especially with Ohio State. I know they've proven themselves with this Wisconsin win on the road, but I think Michigan's a harder place to go in and win than Camp Randall.
And I would even argue for Michigan. You talked about a young team going into a hostile environment.
Yeah.
Michigan's quarterback Spade. This is his first year starting.
Yeah. That's tough.
And they don't have a test this year really on the road like they would against Ohio State. So
yeah. Well, Jim Harbaugh's already got that game in the back of his mind. He's already thinking about that game.
Everyone's thinking about it. I'm sure game day's already packed up and ready to go there for the end of the year.
If those teams stay undefeated for sure. Big 12, Baylor and West Virginia. They're still undefeated. The Big 12. They will face 3 common opponents. Throughout the rest of this season, before the close of the season, before they play each other, they both will face Texas, TCU, and Oklahoma.
3 very tough games, especially for Baylor.
Who do you think has the best chance of coming out with the better? I mean, do you see Baylor and West Virginia running the table in those?
No.
So who do you think?
I put my money on West Virginia just because Baylor, their strength of schedule this year so far has been 112. They have played absolutely nobody. They haven't gotten tested yet.
West Virginia has?
Well, they played Texas Tech on the road, which I picked Texas Tech, so I have my marbles on the Red Raiders. But they won 48-14. It's a really impressive performance for West Virginia. Their quarterback play is outstanding. I don't give either of them a good chance, but I think if I was to pick one, I'd pick West Virginia.
I can agree with you there. I do think that the game at the end of the season between Baylor and West Virginia,
if one of them only has one loss and one of
could
them's
be
undefeated,
the Big 12 champion.
Exactly.
Right there. I mean, that could be the championship since they don't have.
And for the Big 12, you want a team to be undefeated. With a one-loss team, that's a little bit shaky.
It depends on the loss. It depends on the loss.
Especially because they do play 3 good teams. So
if they lose to Oklahoma, it's excusable.
It's
excusable.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Pac-12, the Washington State game, which is going to be at Washington State, the home game for the Cougars. At the end of the year, in my opinion, could be one of the toughest tests that Washington faced all year.
Because Washington, I mean, if they go in there undefeated, they could be looking right over to the Pac-12 championship. Because Washington State, you said they were tied. They're both 3-0.
Sleeping on the
Washington
Cougars.
State, Mike Leach is a good coach.
Yeah.
And they're a good team.
Not to be underestimated at home.
Yeah, I mean, they could play. Luke Folk, great quarterback, and someone that can match Washington's offense possibly. So
we have 3 amazing games in the year between Michigan, Ohio State, Washington State, and Baylor, West Virginia.
We're gonna have to split screen the TV.
I
Have
know.
to watch all
Yeah,
three
have
at
the
once.
iPad, the computer, and
Hopefully
all.
Clemson, South Carolina is not too good of a game.
No, yeah. Well, that game will be at home for us.
That's true.
So we'll probably be at that game. Last conference, obviously, is the SEC. Really big story here was just the Tide. You know, they rolled A&M.
The Tide rolled.
Or I'm sorry, they rolled Tennessee. They looked like they would roll A&M
At this
if they
point,
played.
A&M's probably got to be scared.
If they played right now, I mean,
And to me, A&M,
there's just nothing that A&M has done that can compare to what Bama's done.
They struggled against South Carolina. They struggled against Tennessee. Both those teams haven't proven anything.
No.
To me, A&M's just here because they're undefeated and they're in the SEC.
They've played well. They're
well.
undefeated.
Yeah,
I give them credit there, but there's nothing.
Don't get me wrong. They're a solid team.
There's just nothing that I'm seeing that's going to allow them to compete with Bama.
A heck of a game plan for Bama.
Yeah.
They're really just going to have to tame Jalen Hurts. Hurts is destroying everyone he's playing so far.
And then Georgia losing to Vandy. That
Kirby Smart.
doesn't look good.
That
doesn't
hurts.
look good.
That hurts.
I don't.
Great win for Vanderbilt.
There's no other way to it just looks bad.
There's no explanation for that.
Yeah.
Nope. So next segment we're going to introduce something new. Since we talk a lot about these teams, the different stats and stuff about them, I'm going to have 3 blind resumes for Jay. I'm going to read 5 different points for each team. I'm not going to tell you who they are.
Teams in the top that are ranked?
These are top 25 teams.
Okay.
Teams in contention for the playoff. And I want you to tell me who these 3 teams are, and I'll go one by one.
All right.
First team, Team A. Their record is 6-0. Their strength of schedule is 87th. Their strength of record, meaning how strong they've been so far this year, is number 8. They only have 1 win against the top 50. And their average point margin, how much they beat teams by, 35 points. Who would you say that is?
Their average margin of victory?
Is 35.
It's not Ohio State, is it?
Nope.
Who is it?
Washington.
Really?
I thought you'd guess Baylor with their bad strength of schedule. Washington is the 87th strongest schedule this year.
Wow.
And that's what I've been trying to tell you this year. I mean, this is nothing to go against you here.
Right.
This wasn't setting you up or anything.
Right.
But 87 is 87, and when you have you incorporate
87 in
for the average FBS team, if they were to go and play everyone's schedule, that would be the 87th hardest schedule in the FBS.
Interesting with the Pac-12. Because we've kind of made the argument that the Pac-12 is
I
deep.
think you're too high on it, man. I mean,
Well, we both
have a bunch
talked
of
about it.
average teams, in my opinion.
Fair.
Like one elite team in Washington.
Fair. And I don't know who they've played the Pac-12. Like they played Arizona and they looked pitiful against Arizona.
I mean, they beat Stanford and
So
Oregon.
they killed them. They killed Stanford.
They did.
They killed them.
They put Stanford in a mess.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
one win against the top 50. Mm-hmm. But their average margin of victory, I will give you that, is 35 points. Their offense is looking good. They look a lot like Baylor, in my opinion.
Yep.
Now, Team B, 7-0 record. Strength of schedule is 18th. They have the second best record. Their record against the top 50 is 4-0. And their average margin of victory is 15.
Clemson.
It's Clemson.
Yep.
It is. Surprising 4 teams in the top 50. We talk about their soft schedule. Now, you can debate whether, teams like Auburn and all that are included in that if they're really top 50 teams. But, strength of records too.
Yeah.
Pretty strong schedule. They're 4-0. So, I mean, I know their play hasn't been as well of late.
Fair argument.
Full
Now,
season,
big difference between 35 and 15 as far as margin of victory goes.
Absolutely.
I mean, 20 points. That's
It is.
offense.
But when you have a strength of schedule of 87, you kind of expect teams to destroy teams.
Yes.
But I know what you're saying.
But
Offense, and I did look up their
15.
points per possession. This is a huge stat that I was looking at this past week. Because really, I mean, when you look at teams, you can see how much they score, but you got to look how many possessions they have.
Clemson's fairly low in that, aren't they?
It's like 16th on that. So
Yeah.
they really, and I know a lot of that's turnovers. A bunch of that it was turnovers.
Well,
for
yeah,
sure.
you turn the ball over, you lose a game.
That's their left back.
Yep.
Washington was number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
So they're scoring at a high pace.
That's why I'm high on Washington.
Yeah.
They put up a lot of points, and
Their
they don't
defense
turn the
has been
ball
strong.
over.
They don't
turn the ball over.
They have been the cleanest team so far this year, by
Which is
far.
why I had them at 1 last week.
But again,
He had Clemson at 1.
I just want to see Washington play a tough team. I want to see how they match up.
Well, I just think that the Pac-12, it's not deep. You don't think they're deep?
I mean,
They're mediocre.
Let me look at the teams real quick. Let me look at the Pac-12.
I mean,
Just
because
go through.
besides Utah,
Cal, I mean, Colorado. I mean, the teams in the bottom half, I would say, are
Arizona
definitely
State,
stronger.
no love there. No love for Washington State.
Okay, Washington State too. Washington State.
I know
too.
Oregon.
Oregon
And Stanford have fallen off the face of the earth, and USC is always eh.
But most conferences, have those 3 or 4 solid teams. And I just think those teams aren't, Washington State's not
They're
ranked.
not where they normally are.
Utah's ranked barely. Cal's not ranked. So
Yeah.
they're good teams. It's a great win for Washington. They're definitely top 10. But
Cal can't be ranked because we got to put Ole Miss in there.
of course.
All right,
SEC bias.
Third resume. Lay it on me.
The third resume. This is Team C. Their record's 5-0.
Okay.
Strength of schedule is 35. Mm-hmm. They have the 6th strongest record. Their record versus the top 50 is 3-0. And their average margin of victory is only 12.5.
A&M.
It's West Virginia.
Really?
A&M was a lot stronger than you think they are. They had like the 6th hardest schedule.
Oh, really? Okay.
SEC, but
West Virginia.
West Virginia, they've only
Now,
played
that's funny because
five
I don't
games.
really consider them a playoff team until recently.
I mean,
even now.
The teams they've played, surprisingly, we talked about them not really having that strong of a schedule.
I mean, I give them more of a chance than Nebraska.
Oh, that was one of the questions we were going to bring up.
Okay, yeah, because I give them more of a chance than Nebraska to make the playoff, but
I mean,
that's surprising.
They destroyed Texas Tech, beat Kansas State, BYU.
Well, Kansas State, are they that good this year?
Not as strong as they usually have been, but I mean they've played well. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, they haven't
Surprising.
destroyed teams
I'm
like
surprised.
Washington, but they've played the same level of competition in my eyes that Washington has. So we'll see how they do carrying forward. They got a lot harder teams ahead of them.
Gotcha.
But those are the 3 teams:
So it was
Washington, Clemson, and West Virginia.
West Virginia. Wow, I like that. We'll have to incorporate that again next week.
After we see some teams move around,
Doing the
we'll see
resume
how
deal,
see
yeah.
how it updates.
Very cool. So now we're going to go ahead and move on and look at our top 4, and the first 2 out, rank the top 6 in our opinion. Go through why we have them, where we have them. You want me to start? You want you to start?
You going ahead?
All right,
I'm
I'll
anxious
go
to hear
ahead.
this.
So I know that I had, Clemson obviously was out of the top 4 last week. I mean, last week I had Washington, Louisville, Michigan, and Alabama. Those were my top 4. And it's pretty different this week. I have Alabama at 1.
Okay.
With their win against Tennessee, the manner that it was just dominant in all aspects, and so I give them the nod to 1. I put Ohio State at 2 because, again, I was very impressed. I wasn't sold on the Buckeyes.
Wow.
I wasn't sold on the Buckeyes.
What did you have them last week?
Last week I had them at 6, so I know that's a high jump. But
Okay.
again, my
All right.
philosophy is start over.
I'm surprised, but I'm happy. You agree with
Every
me.
week, again, you got to look at their most recent performance, and I know it's a body of work, but you can't. This structure style where you can only move so much is BS.
What's your 3rd team? South Dakota State.
3rd team is Washington. I have the Huskies at 3. Again, when I look at the way that they've played, I just think we were talking about offensive production a minute ago and how dominant they've been offensively and not turning the ball over. I have the Wolverines at 4. So that means Clemson is still out of the top 4. I have them at 5.
Okay.
And this was honestly the hardest 2 teams to rank was Clemson and A&M. I originally had Clemson at 6, A&M at 5, but I put Clemson at 5 and A&M at 6 after looking at these 3 key types of statistics that I want to go over real quick. I want to look at margin of victory and the rankings for those top 6 teams. I want to look at points per game and the rankings for those 6 teams, and I want to look at yards per play. Okay, let me look. Michigan, right now, in margin of victory, number 1 in the country, 39.7.
Well, I would say those stats are a little misleading because they did beat Rutgers 78-0.
Fair enough, but they've done what they needed to do. Ohio State sitting at 2, 36.5 margin of victory. Washington sitting at 3, 34.8 margin of victory. Okay. Alabama sitting at 4, 30.4 margin of victory.
That's the most impressive one on
Now
there.
you could argue that's the most impressive because of the SEC and the caliber of teams that you're facing. But if you notice, all those 4 teams that I just listed that go 1, 2, 3, 4, I have in my top 4. Where do you think Clemson ranks?
They're definitely not up there.
No, they're 19th. They are 15 points per game margin of victory. Against an ACC schedule has not been impressive.
18th hardest schedule though.
True. Now A&M. This is part of the reason why A&M I have them at 6. A&M 26th. They have 11.8 points in their margin of their average margin of victory. Now looking at points per game. Again, we talked about offensive production. Louisville obviously is number 1.
Yeah.
Washington's 2, 50.3. Then you have Michigan at 3 with 50. Ohio State at 4 with 49.3. You have Alabama at 5 with 45.4. So again, those 4 teams, 2, 3, 4, 5, all in my top 4. I've looked at margin of victory and points per game. Now this is interesting. A&M ranks 30th. They're at 34.8 points per game. Clemson ranks 35th. They average only 32.8 points per game.
Okay. Yeah.
So low in margin of victory and points per game. Now I know that those go hand in hand. If you score a lot, you're going to have an increased margin of victory.
Of course.
But in both instances, basically the top 4 teams in the country I have in my top 4.
Okay.
Which leads me to the last stat column, yards per play. Washington's first. They average 7.3 yards per play. That's impressive. It's impressive. Mm-hmm. Alabama's second, 6.8 yards per play. Ohio State's third, 6.6 yards per play. Now this is where it kind of shakes up a little bit. You have A&M at 4, they average 6.5. You have Michigan at 5th, they average 6.2. And Clemson's close. They're 6th with 6.0. But again, this is part of my argument as to why I have Clemson right now out of the top 4. When you look at margin of victory, points per game, and yards per play, Clemson is the only one they're not dead last in is margin of victory in those top 6 teams. They're 19th overall, but they're 5th out of those 6 teams. They're 6th in points per game, and they're 6th in yards per play.
And
offense.
I think that's part of what you can look at. I wouldn't judge the top 4 just on that, because you're looking at those 2 stats and you're just ranking those teams based on
again,
offense.
that's part of the reasoning.
I understand where you're coming from, but then you got to look at who they've played, because you can score a lot of points, but then you have to play a tough team.
So who has Clemson played for them to only be averaging 32 points per game?
We have the 18th hardest schedule in the country. We've played Georgia Tech, Auburn, Louisville, NC State. Those are top 50 wins we've had.
I understand, but
who has Michigan played? Now I want to see that.
Michigan ranks first in margin of victory and third in points per game.
They have the 52nd hardest schedule this year. Michigan's
they may not have played anybody overly tough, but at least they're putting up ridiculous high numbers.
But you just trapped yourself there. You said they're not playing anybody overly tough.
They haven't faltered. But they haven't faltered.
When you play easier teams, you're going to play better. And you're
but that's like
more.
You say, when you play a cupcake game, people only pay attention if it's close. If you dominate 78-0 against Rutgers, people don't pay any attention. They've done that Troy is 5-1, but that's no excuse. The game was at home. There is no excuse for the way that we played against Troy.
What I would look at, especially for Clemson's sake, and I'll get to my top 4 in a minute, the only reason we're not scoring is because of turnovers. And I just think, to me...
Those teams don't have them.
To me...
You just talked about points per possession.
Turnovers are more avoidable than a bad offense.
Oh, I don't know, Bo. Once you get the turnover bug,
and I know
that's a strange thing. It doesn't go away.
But to me, that's just not, that's a part of it, but it's not the one.
I hear the argument on turnovers, but I don't think you just lickety-split get rid of them. I don't think that's how it works.
I think from what we've seen, though, our offense has been clicking and our defense has been playing great. To me, I mean, we have like I said, we have the best win in the country. I haven't seen that from these teams yet.
The best win in the country anymore after their performance.
Team?
I think Ohio State does at Camp Randall.
At Wisconsin?
Yeah,
but
easily arguable.
Debatable. Debatable.
You could say Bama at Tennessee, even though I'm not really. We don't put Tennessee up there.
I would still say Louisville at home is a better win than that.
The fashion that they whooped up on Tennessee, they gave up 10 points. This whole Louisville is the best win in the country because it was at home and we beat.
But that's the best team that anyone's beaten yet. That's arguably
really because they didn't do very well against Duke. They should have lost.
To me, that was a down week.
So you're telling me that if Louisville played Wisconsin right now at a neutral location, you would, without a shadow of a doubt, give the nod to Louisville?
Absolutely.
Even with their performance against Duke versus Wisconsin's performance against Ohio State?
Yeah, you got to figure, not every team is going to dominate week in and week out. You're going to have a down week. Louisville had a down week.
Bama, every week.
Bama almost lost to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is 3-3. Every team has this.
They had a bug against Ohio Miss, State. Though. They almost lost 3 in a row.
Like we said, they didn't start well against Indiana. They picked it up. They eventually ended up winning 38-17. Michigan was down at Colorado.
I just know that when I look at the offensive production numbers, Clemson is, when you look at the top 6 teams, they're always at the bottom. Okay. So and again, I know that this will all change at the end of the year when teams.
The way that I do it is I like to see if they were to play the top 5 teams, how would they do against them? Take out how they've looked against mediocre teams.
Why?
Why?
Why would you take that out? That's part of their season.
I'm matching up Clemson, how they've done, and how I've seen them against these other teams.
And you're telling me that a Clemson team that needed overtime to beat NC State at home would match up well against a Michigan team to beat Rutgers 78-0?
That's not the same scale. Rutgers and NC State are two totally different teams. They're about the same.
You think
as
we could beat
SC
Rutgers
State.
at 78-0?
Okay, that's different.
We'd give up
You
points.
can't use the Rutgers game to separate two teams.
How do you sit there though and try and say that
It's like saying if we beat SC State 59-0 and Michigan beat them 42-14, it's not really, you don't judge that.
But those are in the same
based on everything
ballpark.
else.
They're in the same
Rutgers and NC State
range.
are not in the same ballpark.
Not caliber of team, but you're losing me on that argument because Michigan and Ohio State and Washington and Alabama have thoroughly, except for maybe a couple games, have thoroughly dominated.
You just said that a couple games.
The offensive, well, except for Washington against Arizona and
You can't
and
say
Michigan
except
against
Washington against Arizona's 2-5. 2-5, and they needed overtime to beat Arizona.
We've played bad against Troy. We've played bad
NC State,
against NC
good
State.
team. Troy, 5-1.
17 points with Deshaun Watson,
We turned the ball
Mike
over.
Williams, Artavis Scott, Ray McLeod. Really?
We were able to win with all those turnovers. That's what I've been
You
saying.
can't turn the ball over. Look at the offensive production for these teams. If you turn the ball over against a Michigan or a Washington, they're going to run down the field.
They haven't played the caliber teams, though.
But it doesn't matter. If they're able to put, my point is this, if Clemson turns the ball over, if you put them on a neutral, they've been doing it all damn year. If you put Clemson on a neutral playing field with a team like Michigan or Washington or Ohio State or Bama, they're going to take advantage of those turnovers, and they're going to score touchdowns. And Clemson is not going to be able to catch up. They're going to dig themselves in a hole.
If we have Rutgers' defense.
That's not the
That's
point.
what I'm saying. Michigan
Our
is not-
defense hasn't even looked that good. We were talking about Boulware on Saturday, and what
You just talked about before the show. You were talking about how impressive Clemson's defense was to only give up 17 against NC State. Who was moving the ball
when we
very
got
well?
dug in a hole, but there were times when you could have driven a semi through that
All I'm saying
front
is
seven.
9 red zone trips, only 2 touchdowns. It's a pretty good
All
ratio
I'm
for
saying
me.
is when you turn the ball over like we have, and you go up against a team that's averaging 52, 50, and 49 points a game,
Might be tough.
you are
Might be tough.
asking for an ass whooping.
But then again, I don't want to keep going back to the same thing I'm saying, but look at who they've played. We have the 18th hardest schedule.
It does not
Washington
matter
has the
who we've
87th.
played. If you
What
play,
do you mean it doesn't matter who we've played?
Because if you turn the ball over against teams like Troy and NC State and Georgia Tech and whoever, teams that really we should handle.
I will admit that
if we turn the ball over like that, and those teams can put up those kinds of points, and we play them, how can
They're
you?
not going to put up those kind of points against us, though. Our
If we
defense-
turn the ball over, what they are.
Our defense, they would not put up 52 against us, okay?
If we turn the
Louisville
ball
would
over,
put-
if we had 5
Louisville-
turnovers against Washington, you know they're going to score touchdowns on at least 3 of
We
them.
had 5, and Louisville only had 36 points. We still beat them.
It was
We're
lucky
able
because
to-
we were at home.
Lucky? You need
Yeah.
luck to win, man.
Well,
you need
my-
luck to win. You can't keep
That
using
is
the home card.
that's where you lose me when you start saying that the turnovers, explosive offenses, you give turnovers to an explosive offense, they will score.
I think turnovers
they
are avoidable.
will.
Especially when
If they're so avoidable, then why do we keep committing them?
I don't know. I have no explanation for that.
I mean, where's
especially fumbles, because interceptions are a lot. When you have a quarterback throwing interceptions like Eli Manning's throwing, or Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing 6 interceptions in a game, it's a lot harder to overcome than fumbling the ball, having to sort
that's just where you lose me though. I want to hear your top 4 now because we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent. but-
I agree with you on the first 2. Bama, Ohio State,
Okay.
the 2 most impressive teams in the country so far.
Okay.
I've still got Clemson 3rd. I just don't
You
see.
didn't drop them?
I had them at 1. Remember?
That's right. Thank
Yeah.
goodness you dropped them.
I had them 1. Okay. At that time, I believe they were the best team in the country. I moved them down to 3rd. I just still think when you match them up with the other teams that fall behind them, like Washington, Michigan, and A&M, I would put my money on Clemson to beat them.
Why? What's the reasoning?
Because to me, they're on the same level as Louisville, who is my 4th team in the country.
Wait though. Hold on. Answer the question. Why would Washington not compete? Why would Washington not beat Clemson?
Because Washington hasn't proven anything against a big team yet. Their best win, arguably, is Stanford, who is now 4-2, 5-2.
And we would, based off what?
Based off what? What are you trying to
say?
We beat Louisville.
That's it? That's your only reason?
We beat them. We've won every game we've played so far.
So was
we have
Washington.
A hard schedule.
So was Washington.
But Washington hasn't played the schedule we have. They have the 87th hardest schedule.
We've played in the ACC It's not that hard of a.
Do you want to look at the numbers? Look at who's Washington played. We even agreed.
So you're telling me that the ACC is a deeper conference than the Pac-12 right now?
At this point, I would say yes. Look at the Coastal. There's 4 teams tied for first.
4 mediocre teams.
Yeah,
do you really?
Everybody in the
Hold
Pac-12
on,
is
hold
mediocre.
on. Do you really think that a team from the Coastal is actually gonna beat Clemson or a Louisville or a Florida State in the ACC championship? You think they have a legitimate chance?
I'm not saying that.
Well, then how is the Coastal
Do you think Utah's going to beat Washington?
Good.
Do you think Colorado would beat Washington?
No, but I think
They're tied
Utah.
for first in the
Utah.
Pac-12 North.
I'm just saying that
UNC?
You talked about how
UNC?
deep the Pac-12 has been. I mean that I'm just saying.
Before a couple weeks ago?
Why would Washington not beat Clemson? Why would A&M
I'm
not
not saying
beat
they
Clemson?
wouldn't. I wouldn't say they wouldn't have a shot, but I would take Clemson more often than not because
Why?
I've seen Clemson on the national stage prove themselves and win, even with 5 turnovers. I've seen Washington play Stanford. We would beat Stanford by a lot.
Well, they did.
Everybody would beat Stanford by
Washington's
a lot.
averaging
They almost
52
lost to
points a
Notre
game.
freaking Dame. Okay?
They're also averaging 7.3 yards per play. Their offensive production is out.
You're not seeing it. You were tunnel vision on offense. Look at the defense they're playing against. If you put
I don't care who they've played if they put up big numbers. If they put up big numbers week in, week out.
Stubborn then.
No, there's no. They're not
being
faltered at all. They haven't had a Louisville performance like they did at Duke. Think about it. Washington has not had a game like that.
Except, what were you about to say?
Except for Arizona.
You can't keep brushing that aside.
Okay, who do you have it for?
I have Louisville. I just think when you match up.
Who are your 2 teams out though? You have
have
Bama, Ohio State, Clemson, Louisville.
I would have A&M and then Michigan.
So you have Michigan at 6.
Still not sold on Michigan. Haven't seen it.
Wow.
So far they've beaten Colorado.
But
Penn State.
they average 40 points in margin of
They
victory.
have played Hawaii, Central Florida, Colorado, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Rutgers. Good win for they barely beat Wisconsin. They scored 14
and
points.
No credit?
They scored 14 points at home against Wisconsin. Ohio State on the road.
They're averaging 50 points a game, and they only managed to put up 14 on Wisconsin.
Can you explain that to me?
That is saying something.
About who?
Michigan.
Exactly. When they match up against a good team, they barely won.
Oh no, that was just a defensive struggle that particular game. For whatever reason, the offensive wasn't clicking like it normally does. But my point is
How
this:
about you use that same line and input Louisville instead of Michigan? Maybe they weren't doing as well on offense against Duke.
Should have lost the game though. There was never watching that
Michigan
game.
should have lost that game?
No,
You didn't watch the game.
Wisconsin was never in a position to win the game.
It was 7-7 with 5 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Doesn't mean they were losing or in a chance of losing the game.
It was tied.
That doesn't mean they
Michigan needed a acrobatic interception with a minute to go to seal the deal.
Force a turnover.
It's about as close as you can get. All right, that was a close game.
Point being, you lose me when you start talking about who they've played and how they, because you look at how they
teams.
Look at how they've done against them though.
But that's how you judge teams: strength of schedule and who they've beaten. Because that's how you judge teams. When you get
I'm looking at who they've beaten and how they beat them.
Who have they beaten?
Washington or
both?
What?
Give me both of them.
I mean, I can't list off every team, but
It's
I know
'cause
they've
there's no one
played. They've played in the Pac-12, but there's no. I'm not. Your argument as why Clemson should be ahead of those teams. Why Clemson, who has played like crap against 2, if not 3 teams this season, should be put ahead of a team like Michigan, who hasn't really done anything wrong. They haven't done anything wrong.
I mean, almost losing a game. We've almost lost games. Everyone's tripped up. I haven't seen a team.
Whoa! They almost lost to a Wisconsin team that Ohio State needed overtime to beat.
We almost lost to Louisville. I mean, every team has. Their
We almost
falters,
lost
man.
to Troy.
They almost lost to
Troy!
Colorado.
That's like, you know what
They were
that's
losing
like?
to Colorado at the half.
That's like Michigan losing to Rutgers until the 4th quarter.
Oh, Troy's better than Rutgers. Troy is 50th in the country. 50th.
In FCS?
No.
Or FBS.
They're in
Are they
FBS?
FBS?
They're 50th. They've beaten quality opponents.
Who? Who have they beaten? Can you name a team?
I will not say.
No,
they're
you
not-
can't name a team.
Hang on.
So you're
Let me-
arguing. No.
Give me time to pull up their schedule. Jeez.
Clemson should not be put ahead of those teams because Michigan has not done anything wrong. Yeah, they beat a team that was
You got to look at what they've done well though.
They whooped up on every team they played except for Wisconsin. Every team. Every
We've
week.
beaten every team we need to.
Washington. Every week.
So you think Michigan?
Except for Arizona.
You
And
think
except
Michigan
for
would have beaten Louisville at home?
Michigan would have beat Louisville.
We played Louisville. Do you think Michigan would have beaten Louisville at home?
At Michigan?
Yeah. With the way that they performed against Wisconsin, only scoring 14 points?
Excuse me, with the way we performed against Troy?
I don't think. I know their offensive numbers are really exploded.
I'd give them a good shot. Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
that's a hostile environment.
We have a good shot too. So you're pretty much putting Michigan and Clemson pretty much in the same boat there.
I'm saying that your argument of Clemson's beaten Louisville and they have a tougher schedule.
We are 4-0 against the top 50. We have the 18th hardest schedule. Did you see the blind resumes
That
I had?
FPI stuff.
Who was the best resume?
Yeah, but
on
strength of schedule is such a subjective thing. That's ESPN pulling it straight out of their rear end.
It's not hard.
That should not trump the eye test. Those numbers should not trump the eye test. When you look at the eye test and you go, okay, Clemson has played poor against Troy and SC State. Michigan, just hear me out here. Michigan, prime example.
SC State. Whoa. SC State?
I'm sorry, what? Troy and NC State.
Yeah.
I thought I said NC State. So the Clemson's played bad against Troy and NC State. Michigan they won by 1 touchdown over Wisconsin. Everybody else, they've killed. Everyone. They've killed them.
To me,
1 touchdown. How do you have Michigan at 6?
What balance? Oh, I think they're. Yeah, I don't see them matching up with the teams.
Why?
I would pick Louisville over Michigan.
But why?
I think
what's the reasoning?
I think Louisville's offense is way more explosive. I really do. They destroyed Florida State. Michigan hasn't done that yet. When you talked about how Clemson was struggling compared to Michigan,
Louisville could barely. I hear you on that argument, but Louisville could barely beat Duke. So for me, Louisville's kind of a spotty team now. Michigan has done nothing this season for me to label them as. I don't really know what Michigan's going to show up this week. Now with Wisconsin losing to Georgia State, we were like, okay, I'm not sure about Wisconsin. What has Michigan done?
And that team almost beat Michigan.
Who almost beat Ohio State with, Alabama
you're looking too much
playing.
into the stats. You're looking too much into games.
I'm not looking into the stats. I'm looking into their offensive production in games that they've played. And Michigan has killed. How you put Michigan at 6 based solely on the fact of their roster is mind-boggling. That this doesn't. There's no argument there to put Michigan at 6.
Try to explain it to you.
What?
I think Louisville over Michigan.
Why?
I would.
Why?
I think their offense is more explosive. I don't think they would be able to handle Louisville.
And you had A&M at 5? And you think A&M is better than Michigan?
Still think they're better than Michigan. Yeah. I'm still not sold on Michigan.
All right.
Beating Colorado and Rutgers and Hawaii and
They've
barely squeaking by Wisconsin.
Wisconsin almost beat Ohio State, which is the team that you continually tell.
Barely squeaking by. I mean, it's just.
They almost beat Ohio State. So Wisconsin's not a good team? So you're telling me, based off of that, based off of that logic, you're telling me that Wisconsin's a bad team.
I think Louisville's a better win than Michigan than Wisconsin is.
Louisville, with how they played against.
Better win. They watched Wisconsin played against Georgia State and almost lost.
After Louisville's performance against Duke,
every team, Wisconsin almost lost to Georgia State. So it's the same thing.
That was 3 or 4 weeks ago. That wasn't the most recent game, though.
But still, it's on the schedule. It's not. I know it's recent, but
that's where you're losing me. But obviously, we'll have much more time to talk about that in the coming weeks. So that's going to wrap up a rather long top 4 segment. We're now going to dive into Twitter polls and questions. I know you have a couple of those pulled up. I think I do. Yeah, I think I do as well. And we can get right into it. So this first question is from Mark Wright, and he asked, who is your pick to win the SEC East and the ACC Coastal?
I would take, at this moment, for the Coastal.
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it?
SEC East. Let me look at the standings real quick, because I got to pull those up before I get into any predictions. Let's see. SEC. We have got.
Well, you've got Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, and then Vandy, South Carolina, Mizzou at the bottom. So I mean, right now Florida's 3-1.
Florida's 3-1.
Tennessee and Kentucky are 2-2.
If Florida loses, Tennessee has the tiebreaker over them.
It's gonna be Tennessee.
I'm gonna go with Tennessee.
It's gonna be Tennessee.
I just think they have a better. I know they got blown out against Bama.
They have at South Carolina.
Yeah.
They're gonna win that game. And then they have a nobody. I don't even know. TNTC. I'm not even sure who that is.
Tennessee Tech. Yeah.
Maybe Chattanooga or something.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Mizzou. Wow, they have a
and then Mizzou, and then at Vandy.
And then Florida.
The only game that they would legitimately lose, and they shouldn't, is Kentucky. So Tennessee, I think, is my pick for the SEC
And then
East.
Florida's got at LSU,
Yep.
at Arkansas, Georgia.
Nah,
So I
Vols,
see them losing one game there. I see Tennessee
Vols
with the tiebreaker.
in the SEC East. Now, looking at the ACC Coastal, this is a little bit more murky.
To me, it's between UNC and Virginia Tech. I don't see Miami competing.
No love for Pitt? No love for Pitt? I mean, look, I'm looking at their schedule. They do have Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Then they have at Miami, at for Clemson, and then with Duke and Syracuse. So that's a tough one. They're going to get probably 2 or maybe even 3 losses in that stretch.
They're playing better.
That's a tough stretch. I can agree, though, with the UNC.
I'm going to have to go with UNC.
Virginia Tech, yeah.
Just because the way that Virginia Tech looked against Syracuse, I don't know if they're a little inconsistent. And UNC's got, like I said before,
I'm picking the Hokies though.
You're gonna
I'm
go with
picking
Virginia Tech?
because again they play Miami, at Pitt, at Duke, Georgia Tech, at Notre Dame, and then UVA. So I give the nod to the Hokies right now. It's
Then they
the
do have the
Hokies
tiebreaker.
to lose.
They do have the tiebreaker.
It's the Hokies to lose.
Yep.
Next question is from Connor Fioretti. Does Louisville make the playoff without playing in the ACC championship game?
Ooh,
Not right now.
It's going to have to come down
Not right now.
to, at this point, I don't think so. It's going to have to come down to, you'd have the SEC champ, probably Bama. You'd have Clemson if they go undefeated. You would have the Big Ten champion between Ohio State and Michigan. And then I think you're really going to have to just hope for Wisconsin, or for Washington to trip up. That'd really be the only hope they would have.
A lot has to happen. I don't see it happening.
A lot has to happen.
I don't see it
There's too many
happening.
moving parts that have to go on.
I agree.
More, less chance than not for them.
Yeah. Were there any other questions?
Anders Wilson, any chance Florida finds themselves in the playoff?
The Gators?
Do you think there's any chance that they could find their way in, and even if they win the SEC?
Oh gosh, they're not going
Because
to win the
let's
SEC.
look
They're
at-
not going to win the SEC. You know.
Well, let's look at their how they've done so far.
I mean, they're 5-1 right now.
so they've only got one loss.
They've got UGA at Arkansas, 2 games they could lose, but now after Georgia lost to Vanderbilt, I think Florida will.
Do you think if they make the SEC championship and they beat Bama, with their lone loss being a comeback win from Tennessee?
My
I think
issue
it's
is this:
arguable.
they go at Arkansas, at LSU. I know LSU and Arkansas aren't normal.
That's a tough schedule.
That's
That's
a
a tough
tough
schedule.
2 away games.
Yeah.
That's tough.
They dropped that LSU game on them. Right
So,
there.
so I don't see Florida getting 10 wins this season. So
Yeah, I mean-
because of that, they're out of the playoff.
They do have Luke Del Rio back.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I
Doesn't
think
matter.
bear with me here. If they were to make the SEC championship and beat Bama, would you put them in? If it hypothetically happened, would you put them in the playoff? SEC? I don't see them counting
Wow.
with the SEC.
I don't even.
I mean, think about it. If they were to run the
If
table,
they had 2 losses,
one loss. They have one loss right now.
I know, but if they had 2,
Yeah.
if you're saying so if you're saying they finished the season like
They
11-1,
roll the table the rest of the year.
yeah, then they're in.
Then they're in the
for sure.
playoff?
But
Well,
now
that's gonna
if
have
they're
to
a
happen,
2-loss SEC champion,
That's going to be
heck, you could almost say that you could throw Bama in there.
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's totally ridiculous, but
I think their only hope at this point is to run the table and then win the SEC.
because no way the Gators would be able to compete in the playoff. I wouldn't give them a chance.
They beat Bama. It's interesting.
That'd be a
We'll see.
fluke.
That would be interesting.
That would be a fluke.
And then let's see. Next question after that. Any chance? This is from my brother Ryan. Any chance Louisville struggles against NC State like Clemson did?
Say that again.
Any chance that Louisville struggles against NC State like Clemson did?
Yeah.
After Duke
After
game.
their Duke game, I have no faith really in Louisville until they step it up again.
Yep.
Nods to NC, props to NC State. They played well against Clemson. They showed us up at home. So yeah, I think there's a chance. Do I think it'll happen? No, but I think there's a chance.
because NC State depended on a lot of turnovers from
Yep.
Clemson. I think Louisville's offense is better than ours.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it like I thought the Clemson game was going to go.
Yep.
Then Austin Stippo, why does UNC look so bad one week and then find a way to win another week? What's with this inconsistency?
I don't know. I mean, I know last year they lost their opener against South Carolina and then ran the table. And a lot of people were like, well, are they for real? And they competed well with Clemson in the ACC championship game. They hung with them. I don't
weather
think there's
might have had something to play with
I don't
it.
really think there's a reason. Now, the Virginia Tech game, yes. The
Yeah.
weather, yes. But it's not like they have been plagued by inconsistent quarterback.
That rainy day, I think, really, it goes to show how much of an impact it had on them. game against Virginia Tech. I mean, it's interesting because Virginia Tech beat them that much, and then they went on to lose to Syracuse. So that almost makes.
Well, I mean, they've only lost. They've only lost to UGA and Virginia Tech. Now, again,
two not very good losses.
The Hurricane game, I guess it's excusable, and they didn't get blown out by Georgia. It was 33-24.
Yep.
So I mean, UNC. Now they barely scraped by against Pitt and FSU. I mean, a combined 3 points. Margin of victory in those two games. One Pitt 37-36 and then 37-35 against at FSU, obviously with that last second field goal. But I had no reason to panic. I mean, I think they can take care of Miami on the road. They did take care of Miami on the road. They should be able to beat UVA. They should be able to handle Georgia Tech. They should be able to beat Duke. Really, UNC could win out the rest of their schedule and easily be sitting at 10-2. Easily.
Depends on how Virginia Tech does, because Virginia Tech has to lose one more game because they have the tiebreaker over them.
Yeah.
For the ACC championship. So
any more questions?
That's enough of the questions.
Yep. We'll move on to the top 5 or top 25 in 5.
Quickly go to the top 25 in 5 minutes. We'll start at the bottom. And first of all, we do have the 5 biggest games.
Yeah, 5 games that we'll be tweeting out our picks for after the show.
We'll do our picks
so that's why we have those games highlighted.
Those on Twitter. Yep.
First game was LSU. They have Ole Miss hosting Ole Miss.
Fournette's back. And Ole Miss 3-3 after a loss to Arkansas. I think if LSU can establish the run game, they're in good shape.
Hostile environment. I give the nod to LSU in that
Navy
game.
Memphis. Memphis, not the same team as last year. Navy looking good after the Houston win.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this the game that Navy just played. It's been postponed, right? They were going to play ECU, but it got postponed. Yep. So they're only 4-1. I'm going to go with the midshipmen.
We'll go with Navy there.
Yeah, pick the midshipmen. We talked about Ole Miss. Moving on to North Carolina at 22. They play at Virginia. I think
at Virginia, I would still go with UNC.
I think they're going to win that game.
Too much.
Agreed.
For Bronco Mendenhall and Virginia. Auburn, Arkansas. I would say after Arkansas's performance against Ole Miss, I think Austin Allen.
I think it'll be a good game, but I think at Arkansas, like you said, the last week's performance, I think that'll be the difference in the game. I think the Razorbacks will get the win there.
With Arkansas there. Western Michigan against Eastern Michigan, a little in-state rivalry there.
Yeah, Western Michigan can go 8-0, and after that, they're going to have at Ball State, at Kansas State, against Buffalo, and against Toledo.
I think at least a 90% chance.
So I mean, there's Western Michigan's going to go. They're going to go 12-0 unless they just screw up royally.
Utah at UCLA. UCLA's been on the downfall lately. Do you see Josh Rosen finally having a good game against Utah?
Utah's going to.
We'll go with Utah there. Tennessee is on the bye. They need to recover from that. Arkansas, Auburn. We did that already. Oklahoma, Texas Tech coming off a really bad loss to West Virginia.
Yeah, and Oklahoma looked somewhat impressive in their win over Kansas State. It was 38-17. I think the Sooners will get it done on the road. I think they'll improve to 5-2.
Absolutely.
Still not the year that Bob Stoops wanted.
No, but I think they're still a solid team. They could still mess some people up.
They can ruin a season. They can ruin a season for sure.
Florida on the bye. Boise State, BYU. This is probably Boise State's best game they have to play this year.
They're 6-0, and again after BYU they play at Wyoming. They host San Jose State, at Hawaii, hosting UNLV, and then at Air Force.
So this could really be their one game to trip them up from an undefeated season.
Yeah, I think, again, with Boise State and Western Michigan, they're not going to make the playoff. But they go 12-0, they can get in a decent bowl game.
Rankings, yep.
For
Florida
sure.
State on a bye. West Virginia, TCU. If I had the TCU helmet, I would put it up here.
Who are you picking in this game?
I'm going to go with West Virginia just solely based on the fact that TCU's really been struggling. And I like West Virginia's offense. I really do with the quarterback play. I think they've been really superb so far.
Yeah, they've had a couple scares this year. They've had the game against Kansas State where they only won 17-16, and then BYU the week before 35-32. But they killed Texas Tech on the road, and I think that they'll do well against TCU.
TCU, they're a good team. They've only lost one game.
Well,
Arkansas by
again,
3.
for whatever reason, we talked about Tennessee in the past, like how they're able to find a way to win. And so far, West Virginia's done it. I think it'll be a close game.
Yeah.
But I think West Virginia will continue to find a way to win. They'll improve to 6-0.
TCU's giving up a lot of points, and that's not something you want to hear before you play West Virginia.
For sure.
Yep. Then Houston, they've got at SMU. You think Chad Morris get the Mustangs
Cougars.
going?
Cougars get it going.
We'll go Cougars. Wisconsin, Iowa. Iowa's been not the same team we thought they were.
Badgers.
We'll go Badgers there.
Baylor's on a bye.
Baylor's
Wisconsin
on a
at
bye.
8. They're hosting Purdue. I think I think the Cornhuskers go to 7-0.
We'll go with Nebraska there. Yep. Louisville, NC State. Talked about that.
I'm still going to go with the Cards.
I'm going to go with Louisville too. I think NC State's going to be overwhelming after the Clemson game.
Yep, agreed.
A&M
At Bama.
at Bama.
Okay, let's say this. Instead of, because we know we're both going to pick Bama.
I'm gonna go Bama. Yep.
Do you think the game will be within 14?
Yes. I think it'll be, let's go with like a 35-21 kind of game. So probably right at 14 points, 2 touchdowns. I think that's fair enough for a top 6 matchup. I think A&M's a good team. You know, they're not going to. Bama's not going to roll over like they did Tennessee. You wouldn't think so.
I think it's going to be a very close game.
Do you
I think it's
really?
going to be down within a touchdown. I know it's at Bama. It's obviously SEC on CBS in the afternoon, 3:30. But I'm high on the Aggies.
Okay.
I don't think they're gonna beat Bama. I want them to.
Yeah, they've just been a little bit.
I want them to, but it's
shaky.
at Bama, and it just that's a hard game to pick against when it's at home for them. Washington at 5 against Oregon State. I'm going to roll with the Huskies here.
Oregon State struggling. Yep. Them and Oregon both. Yep.
Clemson on a bye, although after the performance against NC State, it won't be a bye for some of those
Gallman
players.
needs a week off.
He does after that hit. He took Michigan at 3. They host Illinois.
Illinois gave Nebraska a little trouble.
They did, but I think Michigan's on a different level.
Michigan's definitely on a level above. Yeah, Ohio State at Penn State, Happy Valley, definitely a hard place to play. But after
not easy coming off of the Wisconsin game. Maybe a hangover. I see Penn State hanging around.
After getting beat 49-10, Penn State did by Michigan. I think Ohio State's just going to be too much.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the Bama game.
I agree.
Yep.
So that's pretty much been, or that was the top 25 and 5 right there. And again, we talked about some of the bigger games this weekend. And that's pretty much going to wrap up the show for this week. We talked about the resumes. We'll incorporate that next week. And then obviously the Twitter polls and then the different.
We'll have our picks on Twitter so we can see those for Saturday.
Yep.
See how we do with that one.
As always, we appreciate you watching. And for Bradley Kendall, I'm Jay Smith, and this has been After Further Review.
Thank you for watching.